I would use the 3 F's, probably one of the oldest techniques known in professional selling. Mr. Prospect, I can certainly appreciate how you feel about the price. In fact, I felt the same way until I found out the improvements that had been included in the product.
Negotiating, justifying price and value. That's our topic for today. Now, what we mean by negotiate is to conduct communications from a basis of agreement, and that you can do throughout the sales process by getting agreements on things like model, color, and equipment, not just at the close when you're asking for the order or when you're trying to handle objections. But what are the basic principles and techniques of negotiation? One of the world's leading authorities on the subject is Professor Roger Fisher, who heads the Harvard University Negotiation Project. Mr. Fisher is a law professor who has been involved in several high-level diplomatic negotiations, including the Camp David talks and the hostage dispute in Iran. Mr. Fisher believes that whether it's a high-level international situation, a business situation, or even a family situation, we're all negotiators.
That's true. Everyone negotiates all the time. Whether I'm talking with my wife about summer vacation plans, my son about his allowance, or my secretary about her salary or the office space, we are negotiating. If 2 people are talking to each other, I want to influence you and you want to influence me, that's negotiation. When we're negotiating, most people think they have to choose between being hard or being soft, between being tough or getting taken. No, there is a better way. We call it principled negotiation. In every negotiation, you have 3 purposes in mind. First, you want to reach a good result. Second, you want to do it efficiently. And third, you want to do it in a way that leaves the working relationship intact so you can work with them again. Adversary negotiation, where you argue over positions, tends to reward the party that's most stubborn. It tends to be inefficient by being drawn out. It tends to exacerbate the relationship. Somebody is likely to feel had. We at the Harvard Negotiation Project have developed some ideas in this area. We've been studying the concepts. We've got a handful of principles, 3 points that have proved useful to us, proved useful to the military, to diplomats, and to business people. Maybe you'll find them useful too. The first one is separate the people from the problem. Perhaps that's the most basic rule of negotiation, to realize you have 2 sets of questions going on. One is how we're getting along with each other. Issues of understanding, perception, emotion, confusion, anger, trust, confidence, all those questions between the human beings involved. The other set of problems are the merits: dollars, acres, delivery dates, pounds, square miles, whatever it is. In negotiation, we often confuse these 2 to our disadvantage. We're likely to reward bad behavior by making a concession on the merits to give somebody something for the relationship.
Let's see what Jackie Cooper, well-known automotive sales training consultant, thinks about that. Mr. Fisher says the first principle of negotiation is to separate the people from the problem. What does this mean to you as a salesperson?
Now, in Mr. Fisher's statement, in proper negotiating, you got to separate the problem from the person. Therefore, if the salesperson has the connotation that the person is the problem, he may attack the person. What we want to do is separate the problem simply by asking the question. As I understand, Mr. Smith, other than, and then I would state the problem. I will separate it from him personally, other than the paint. You would own the car if it was the proper color. Is that correct, sir? If it's the automatic transmission, he wants a 5-speed. As I understand, Mr. Prospect, if this car had the automatic transmission, then this is the car you would like to own. Is that correct, sir? Now, I've separated the problem from the person. In his mind, the consumer's mind, it may be that that is a big problem. And if the salesperson is not careful, he will attack, not intentionally, but he will approach the prospect, not the problem. So I have to separate it. If that prospect continually goes back to price, I've got to bypass. I would use the 3 F's, probably one of the oldest techniques known in professional selling. Mr. Prospect, I can certainly appreciate how you feel about the price. In fact, I felt the same way until I found out the improvements that had been included in the product. So I appreciate how you feel, sir. I did feel the same way until I found that out. My efforts there are to bypass the price objection. Another would be with a question. Let's use the example of a $12,000 automobile. He said, but that car's $12,000. I don't think it's worth that. Again, the 3 F's. I appreciate how you feel, sir. I felt the same way until I found the benefits involved in this car, that's been included in this car. Benefits that you would be, I'm sure, proud to have in your next car. The illustration is I'm trying to get by this price objection. He may, again, go back to price. Then I would use a technique called a residual technique. To control the conversation, I ask the last question. Mr. Prospect may ask, how long would you anticipate owning your new Chevrolet? 2, 3, 4 years? Again, it's a trial to get him off a price. He says, what's that got to do with it? Well, you know, the price of the car has very little to do with the cost of the car. The price has very little to do with the cost. The way you arrive at cost, Mr. Prospect, is look at your initial investment and also your return on that investment. Now you've got cost. For example, Mr. Prospect, if you own this car for 4 years and it had a 50% residual, which I think is more than realistic, and we can take a moment and look that up in the residual book on a leasing chart. If it's $12,000, you get $6,000 back. Your initial investment is $12,000, but your cost is only $6,000. And if you're moving from a car getting 14 miles to a gallon up to 28 miles per gallon, I'll take the fuel chart again. You're saving over $3,000 just in fuel cost. Now, if you get $6,000 back and you save $3,000, we're looking at $3,000 is what it really boils down to. Now, let's divide that by 48, and let's see what your cost per month would be. Not your payment, and not your monthly investment, but your cost. I'm attempting to get off a price by justifying to the consumer the residual, the fuel savings, reducing the resistance in his mind, making him more acceptable to make the commitment on that car or that truck.
Suppose you have to deal with a customer you just don't like. How do you handle that situation?
I try to use a lot of empathy. If I don't like that prospect, normally I will telegraph through telepathy that feeling, normally. Now, if I can separate the desire, or in this case the problem, from the individual, then I can focus my attention on the problem, not the person. However, if that personality conflict continues to exist, maybe it's on my part, maybe it's his dress, maybe it's his mannerisms, maybe it's rudeness, if that is obvious, then I will approach management for what we refer to in the automobile business as TO. I believe when there's personality conflict, that is, to me, number one in the objections. If the personality conflict exists, you're going to have to get a different personality involved after you've tried to focus more on the problem and not the person. Now, if I'm not successful doing that, then I must TO the deal.
Now, here's Mr. Fisher with the second principle.
A second basic principle of negotiation is to look behind declared positions for the underlying interests. There's a real difference between positions and interests. Positions are what we say we'll do, say we won't do, what we demand, what we talk about, what we insist upon. Interests are the reasons. Interests are our needs, our hopes, our concerns, the reasons we're negotiating. We want to negotiate about those interests, not about those stated positions.
Mr. Fisher's second principle is to look behind declared positions for underlying interests. Please comment, Jackie, and give us an example if you can.
A declared position always has a motive. I want to find the motive of why that declared position is taken by the consumer. In an illustration, if it's price, why has he established this particular price as a problem? I got to get behind that. Is it the down payment? Is it the payments he's seeking? Is it the allowance? I've got to get behind the declared position by asking the right questions. That motive in that consumer's mind has to be brought forward and brought out so that the salesperson can effectively handle that particular objection. So that declared position is not always the dominant buying motive. In every close, I find there are other methods to close the deal or get the commitment, such as a right way, a wrong way is usually the approach most salespeople take. I find there's a right way, a wrong way, and another way. I've got to find the other way, which is usually behind the declared position of the prospect, be it paint, be it equipment, be it color. The declared position is sometimes a front or a screen, as I refer to it. I've got to get behind that by asking questions. Why is that so important to you, sir? If I could answer that satisfactorily, that I could share enough information with you, that you could convince yourself that this would not be that big a problem or that would not be that big an objection, would you own the product? I've got to get behind the declared position. It's usually a front.
Suppose you have a customer who insists he wants such and such a car, but you know he can't qualify for it financially. How do you uncover his real needs and get him to settle on something he can afford?
Let me approach it on a basis of experience. The prospect stating he cannot afford it, and this may be in price, budget, payment, by taking a complete, thorough customer statement, a credit out, as it's referred to in most dealerships. You'll usually find when you have a price objection or a payment objection or a budget objection, the answer is found in the customer statement, the credit out. Other obligations is usually the reason the consumer cannot make the purchase. Now, as a professional, by taking the customer statement or credit application, as it's referred to, I may find while taking that information an opportunity, as we call it, to combine some accounts which would give him more funds that he could pay toward his car. Now, if that's not satisfactory, we'll go for other measures, such as we'll look at another car with less equipment, we'll qualify his needs and his wants, see if the need is there or if it's a want. I find if the prospect really needs it, in most situations he'll not give it up. But if he wants it and he doesn't need it, there is a difference. If he wants it and doesn't need it, by exposing to him a different model with different equipment, I can successfully get his commitment to purchase the car.
Now here's Mr. Fisher with the third principle of negotiating.
A third basic principle of negotiations is invent options beforehand. If you and I are negotiating, we're trying to reach agreement on one answer. This causes us to try and narrow our minds. In fact, the best way to negotiate is to have lots of options on the table first, many to choose from. Most negotiators say, no, I got enough problems to deal with already. I don't want any more troubles. Or they come in with one proposal. They say, here's the answer. An option is something that's going to meet my interests and yours, something we both can live with, and I should have several of these around available to use. A poor negotiator comes in with one plan, and it's a take it or leave it proposition. Frequently, he gets left.
Fisher's third principle is to invent options beforehand. Give us an example of that, Jackie.
Through proper training, if you have options, not is the consumer going to do it, but which way is he going to do it? Let me give an example. If it was involved with a payment, it could be 36, 42, 48, 54, 60 months. These are options. Another would be a different type product that's available, such as from a Cavalier, maybe we're going to go over to a Celebrity. We've got options, techniques that can be used to, we call it switch. Options is in strategy. If I go into, quote, close a deal, I want to analyze the situation and graphically put on paper what are my options. In other words, if I'm blocked at this position, where do I go? If I'm blocked at that position, where do I go? Now, this could be related to, again, product, color, interior trim, allowance, difference. What are my options? Now, through professional training and role-playing, this can be established. Therefore, it's not a surprise to the salesperson, not the professional. He knows the options, which way he can go with this consumer. Now, by presenting these options in more than two ways, always give three would be my suggestion. By giving three, it's not yes or no, it's which one. And by presenting the three proposals, now he has an option. And that strategy is established in training.
Suppose you have a customer whose heart is set on a car that you don't have in stock and he's about to walk. What are your options?
Knowing the inventory as a professional should, My option would be, first of all, to attempt what we refer to as a switch. By knowing the inventory, a car that would be close or in some way similar to the one he'd requested. Second would be an option, even though it may be unusual, is knowing the used car inventory, that maybe I could switch him to a used car. The key word there is switch. That would be another option. Third, if the system in the store or the procedure is established so that I could use a different personality, another person. No is never no forever. No is never no forever. So if he says no to me, and he's established that base, no, 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 by TOing that deal, or what I refer to as a turnover, the no to me may not be no to someone else. The personality or the persuasion through the other personality may be adequate enough to prohibit this particular prospect from leaving.
And that's it. 3 basic principles of negotiation. First, separate the people from the problem. Second, look behind declared positions for underlying interests. Third, invent options beforehand. By putting these principles into daily practice and exercising your negotiating skills, you can prove to your customers that their interests are best served by dealing with you. As you gain experience as a principled negotiator, you'll find that you can create a more productive atmosphere, improve your closing ratio, and make the best deal for all concerned.
I watch these professional fighters. I notice they'll fight for 3 minutes, but for 1 minute they go check with their manager.
Overcoming objections is a skill that can help improve your closing ratio and maximize your effectiveness with the customers you now see. It's all in a day's work when customers, for one reason or another, interrupt the sales process with an objection. See if any of this sounds familiar.
Maybe I'll come back next week and look around again.
The payments are how much? You gotta be kidding.
Come on now, I'm sure my old car is worth more than that.
If you don't have the car with that equipment on the lot, I'll just have to go somewhere else.
It's funny, isn't it? People come to us presumably because they want or need a new vehicle. Then they tell us why they're not going to buy one. What you just saw and heard are the 4 most common objections to buying. These objections are really nothing more than excuses. If you can learn to get around these temporary roadblocks, you'll sell more cars. So let's get to work by hearing from our experts, the retail consultants. All right, let's talk about overcoming objections. Clint, why do customers walk in the first place?
Well, customers walk for one of 4 reasons. One reason is they don't like the person waiting on them. That happens about 15% of the time. Another reason is they don't like the product or you don't have the product in stock. Third reason is that they don't like the dealership. And the 4th reason is the price. Now then, I try to teach managers when a salesperson cannot get a customer on paper, I use those 4 things in a TO, in a close for a manager. He'll call the prospect to his office or to one side and say, you know, Mr. Jones, people come in this dealership and they don't buy for 1 of 4 reasons. They don't like the salesperson waiting on them. Now, Charlie, the salesman that waited on you a while ago, was he okay? He says, oh, he was great. Second reason they don't buy, they don't like the product. Now, the little Camaro that you were looking at out there a while ago, is that the one you were interested in? Oh, yes. Well, the third reason they don't buy is because they don't like the dealership. Now, I know it's kind of late in the day, and we try to keep this place pretty clean around here. Is there anything you see around here you didn't like in the dealership? Guy says, no. Well, the only other reason they don't buy is because of the price. Now then, is it the price? And if I could put you in this car for $140 a month, and give you $3,800 in cash for your trade-in, could we talk turkey? So those are the 4 reasons they don't buy, and the main reason, in my opinion, is price.
Jackie?
Well, if I could compliment what Clint has used as the guidelines for why they walk, an objection is a valid reason for not committing that arises in a prospect's mind, and it's brought there by the lack of information or understanding or feelings. Now, if it's lack of information, I need to know that. If it's feelings, I need to know that as a professional salesperson. If he doesn't understand, I need to know that. I find he hasn't been sold. No one caused him to feel, think, and act. He came in, but he was not sold. Nobody processed the sale from feeling, thinking, and acting. As a professional, I can justify the price. I think I should be able to. If it's feeling at a professional level, I want him to feel comfortable that I'm there to be of service. If he doesn't understand, then I want my manager or my TO man. I'll call him a TO man. Let's call him a manager or the boss. I want him to review the transaction. In order to prohibit him from walking, I make that commitment. I'll never, under any circumstance, be the last person to talk to a consumer unless my deal is closed. I'll never give him the keys back on his trade-in. I know that's controversial. That's my manager's job. That's not my job. And he'll never get a final price. I personally believe that a consumer walks because he's been given a final price and was never sold the product.
Yes,
Jack,
Tex.
I want to hitchhike on this a minute. I appreciate Jackie's definition of an objection, but I think let's go one step further. An objection is an unanswered question in the mind of the customer, and that's basically what he's saying. It can be a negative barrier, it can be a bad communication between two people, or it could be price. If the customer would actually tell you the real objection they're leaving, that'd be more fisticuffs in the closing booth than anywhere else. The real reason is the objection, but the stated objection is not the reason that he's leaving. Mm-hmm. In other words, he said 9 out of 10 of the things you hear from the buyer is a stated objection, which is what? A stall or an excuse. Mm-hmm. And there's 2 little animals that work in a person that we have to think about called pride and vanity. A lot of salesmen never give a customer a chance to save their pride and vanity. They close them off at the pass. Well, I've got you beat. Oh, no, you haven't. No, there's no way you can beat our deal. You closed them off. Or I'm going to go see if I can find the color. You'll never find that color. No, just something, Jack, that to where they start asking these questions or giving you these things. We believe it or we become argumentative with them.
Jackie, how do you handle the customer that walks saying he'll be back?
I'd like to comment on what I refer to as a winner's walk. The winner's walk is no more than a salesperson who has tried and attempted under management supervision to sell and close the deal. Now, if I'm not going to be the last person to talk with him, I want my manager to release, in this illustration, release that prospect to leave the premises. If he drove in some type vehicle, where it's a trade-in or where it's not a trade-in, he's got to go back and get in that car to leave. Now, psychologically, I think here is the moment that a lot of salespeople miss. Between the time he walks out of that closing booth and heads back to that car, where it was a trade-in or not, whatever he drove in, if he's going back to that car, I'm going with him, all the way. I believe from the time he walks to that showroom floor back to that trade-in, he's going through turmoil in his mind. He came to get a car, he's leaving without it for whatever reason. On the way back to that car, I go with what I refer to as an apology close. Mr. Johnson, I certainly want to apologize to you for really not doing my job properly. I know that's the car you'd like to own, and I just asked if you would, sir. I've got a wife and 5 children. This is the way I earn my living. Would you be so kind to just share with me what I did that was wrong so that I won't make the same mistake again? Would you do that for me? I'd certainly appreciate it. Would you do that for me? A lot of times, he'll come out and tell me. On the other hand, he'll say, well, you didn't do anything wrong. Then I use one of the strongest closing tools a man's got, his hand. If he says, well, you didn't do anything wrong, then you're going to take the car, are you? Well, a number of times I can get him back in the door. I see salespeople who will have an invited guest come to a dealership at a tremendous cost and let that person leave and never walk them back to the car. And we've all heard this in the business. Well, that's more than my house costs. Well, now, we've gone through that. I had a gentleman say this to me the other day in Indianapolis, Indiana. He said, well, and I was pricing, in this case here, putting the market value on a van. And he said, what are you asking for this van? I said, sir, the market value is $25,000. He said, $25,000? That's the market value. He said, market, in other words, that's what they bring on the market? Now, see, when he said that, he accepted market value.
Right.
Then he came back with a famous line, you know, that we hear is automobile. Well, that's more than my house costs. So I've learned a technique from a fellow salesperson. I said, well, I'll tell you what, dude, just give me the title to your house or the deed to your house, and I'll get you the title to the van. He said, oh, no. He said, now, my house worth over $100,000 today. I said, isn't it wonderful? These new vans haven't gone up near as much as old homes. So, you know, you create a little humor.
Sure.
I love to see people laugh, have some fun.
How do you handle the price objection? Tex?
First of all, if you haven't justified the price, and when I say justified the price, if you haven't made the price and the values and the benefits to the level of where the value is above the price, then you haven't done your selling job. I'm going to take a very positive assumption. Possibly he does have me beat. But I'm going to give that customer 9 chances. Now, I'll hit them off real quickly with Jack. I'm going to give him 9 questions, giving him 9 opportunities to get out from under that I've got you beat or the price objection. The 9 questions that I'll ask a buyer in order to either let them save their pride and vanity or find out if they actually do have me beat would be first, what make are we comparing? You see, I want to make sure that we're not comparing apples and bananas and prunes. I want to know that we're apples and apples. Next is, what series? I want to know that I'm in the right series of the automobile. Number 3, what model? In other words, a 2-door, 4-door, hatchback, a wagon, whatever it might be. Now, that's going to lock me in on the product. The 4th thing I'm going to ask is, what equipment are we comparing? Jack, let me tell you something. In 47 years in this business, I've never had a buyer that can tell me all the equipment that's on the car. Now, then the next thing, I'll ask him what accessories. Now, here's where I would alert salesmen to be very careful. Now, if he says, well, it had radio, which one? Had air conditioner, which model? In other words, question it. Don't say, and I hear a lot of salesmen say, was that the 8-track, 4-speaker? Oh, yes, yes. You mean Comfortron air? Oh, yes. You know, the buyer's going to say yes. If he can pick all that up, certainly he's going to do it. I want to give the buyer a chance to get out of this, see, but I also want to know what equipment and what accessories. Now, the next one is, when was this offer made? See, a lot of times people will shop for 6 months, buy and deliver in 6 seconds. I don't know that I'm doing a 6-month appraisal. You know, I'm not trying to meet a price that's 6 months old. Number 7 is, when could they deliver? Well, they got to order. It's going to take 4 or 5 weeks. If I didn't have it, I could probably match that price too. That's why it's important to sell out of stock. See, when they make their mind up to buy, that's the time right then to go for the jugular vein. And I don't mean pressure. I mean that's you got your hot buying signal. Number 8, what was the odometer reading? Now, for many years, I've used another question. I said, was that a brass hat? Was that a demonstrator? Oh, no. I never got a yes to it yet, if they can get a new car for the same price. But when I asked about the odometer reading, well, it was a new car. I'm sure it was, Mr. Bauer, Ms. Bauer, but what was the odometer reading? Well, I don't know. You know, a lot of dealers drive their cars all the way from Detroit. You know, I want to place something in their mind. Now, that's not wrong, and don't strike it for any reason that it might be wrong, Jack, because what I'm doing, I'm giving that buyer, said, that could be it. Or sometimes it had 3,300 miles on it. So what was I doing? I was trying to meet the price of a demonstrator. And lastly is, and this ties in with exactly what Jackie said, did management approve your offer? Did management approve your offer? Oh, I didn't make the offer. The salesman told me. Now, what's he saying, fellas? He's on a high ball or a low ball. That's it. So I found if I use those 9 questions, Jack, I get a way to go on overcoming that objection by trying to get the real objection out rather than just the stated objection.
Please go to Side B for continuation of Overcoming Objections. Our panel of experts now continue on the subject of overcoming objections.
I'd like to add to that, the prospect normally walks because he's got a final price. Now, if he's got a final price, and it is not one that the consumer will commit to, that he'll own the car now, if I turn and give him a final price, in this illustration, if I've given him a final price, I'll use this almost like a cliche today, and the audience can listen to this and give it some discussion. You give a prospect a final price, you lose your gross or you lose your deal. You're going to lose one of the two. Because if he's got a final price, what's he going to do with it? He's going to shop it.
You're going to shop you.
You'll never see him again. Clint said, go to his home. You better go to his home. Some records that we have validate that 38% of them buy a car within 4 hours. You wait and follow him up the next day, it's too late. He's not going to get a final price from me. Never. Because if he will not commit to me, I'm certainly not going to commit to him. Now, I'll negotiate with him. It's a give and take situation. But my job is to get an offer and take it to management. Clint?
I'd like to add something to this. You should never argue with a customer.
Amen.
If he says, I've got you beat, can you be beat? Sure you can. So what I like to do is, listen, he says, I got you beat. I said, there's no doubt about it. I know I can be beat. We're not the cheapest in town. We just happen to be the best. And you know, it costs a little more to go first class. For instance, you told me you were a dentist. What do you charge to extract a tooth? $100, huh? Did you know I can get a tooth pulled for 20? Now, this is the value of qualifying a customer when you get into this closing situation to find out what his job is. Then you can relate these things and overcome his excuses and objections. Like, for instance, the customer says, you're not giving me enough for my trade-in. Say, I know it. It's worth a lot more money to you than it is to me, but I think you agree it's got to have tires on it. It needs a paint job. Would you buy it with a chipped and split windshield? No, you wouldn't do that. I think you understand what I'm talking about. Sure, I'd like to give you more for your car, but I can't. He says, well, if you're not going to give me any more for my car, I can sell my own car. I'm going to agree with him again. I said, sure you can. But let me ask you something. In the city that we're living in here, you're going to have 1,200 professional salesmen competing with you. Would you be there to answer the phone? Would you recondition your car? Sure, you can do those things, but it's going to take time. And you know what? We're not out pulling teeth. You shouldn't be out selling cars. I think you understand that. Go ahead and sign that thing for me, man, before I slap you. No, don't say that.
All right. How do you handle the situation where you don't have the car the customer wants?
If I could approach that, I'm a
Please.
salesman. I try to switch him to something I do have. Now, if I don't have the car with management's consent, then I'm going to try to switch him. But before I'd ever say, we can order the car for you, we can have it built like you want it. The minute I say that, prospect, sir, we don't have that car in stock, I've given him away out the door. I'm going to write the best proposal I can get on the car nearest the one he had in mind. If I don't have anything close to what he wanted, I'm going to try to switch him and cause him to want what I've got.
How do you
cause him to feel, think, and act.
How do you switch him, Jack?
First of all, I'm going to take an inventory walk with him.
Okay.
I'm going through the inventory, and I find a lot of people are emotional. Practically all buyers are emotional. If I get him emotionally involved in something I have in stock, we'll just see if he's going to walk.
And I've always found also, if you just walk them out among the inventory, and you don't have to lie to them or anything, you say, I want a red one. You walk out there, say, well, let's go out and see if we can find one. You know, I say, I don't see it, I guess somebody sold it yesterday. But how about this white one over here? We'll hang a red light over it.
Yeah.
No, don't say that. But usually, the prospect will have a second choice if he doesn't see his first choice out there. Because it's all the inventory we've got out there, he's got to have a second choice. So take him out and walk him among the inventory.
Then if you can't switch him, it might be appropriate with management's consent. Let's see if we go for an order. Let's see if we go for a dealer locate. Again, I go back to management. I watch these professional fighters. I notice they'll fight for 3 minutes, but for 1 minute they go check with their manager. I do the same thing. My manager's still the boss. He got that position because of his qualifications. He's responsible to that dealer. He is my manager. That is an invited guest of the dealership. I have no right whatsoever to permit that consumer to leave without my manager letting me know it's all right to let that consumer leave.
How do you handle trade-in objections? Tex?
Well, first of all, the trade-in objection is part of my selling procedure. I teach it, I train it, I've done it since 1937. I ride in the customer's car with him. I just don't walk around him. I hand him that appraisal pad, I have him fill out the top of the pad. I have him give me the odometer mileage. I walk around the car with him without saying a word, not running it down, but I run my hand down the crease that's on the left front fender. I don't ask him, did anybody get hurt when the train hit it or anything like that, or I feel all the lead. I said, somewhere somebody has had a little repair made on this. Did you know you've got some dum-dum in the fender here? Oh, well, that's just a little something. Asking price, liking price, taking price. We have to remember, when a customer comes in, they've been taught how to negotiate. They've been taught how. So I'm going to go around that car with him, and I'm going to or her, either the case may be, I'm going to take the dime out of my pocket and stick it in the tire. It's never made change yet, but then I don't know what it means, but I'll do it. And watch them start telling me about the tires. I mentioned the fact, you notice you got new Michelins on the front, but I just noticed on the back here you got mismatched tires. Now, is there any particular reason? Why, yes, when you look, you're going to find I don't have a spare either. We had a little accident, and so we bought new tires for the front and put the others on the back. Well, what he's telling me, asking price, I'm not going to get that. Down to the liking price, and now I'm getting in a position to negotiate on the trade-in. But you see, 9 times out of 10, a used car salesman will go into a close without knowing the used car condition, not value. Now, if I walk into you and I hand you my watch and I ask you to evaluate my watch, I'm asking you to do what? Tell me the condition of it. But if I ask you to appraise it, that means how much is it worth? I don't want to get into how much it's worth. I want to evaluate the condition of that car. Then I want to get the keys from that buyer on the pretense, which is not pretense, part of the procedure of checking the tire or seeing if the hatchback works operative and so forth. But then when I get in that car with him, I want you to listen to this carefully. Any young salesman, any salesman been selling time off, you'll just do one little testing of the water right here. I'm driving that car, and I don't mean drive it several miles, just around the block. That's all. Just around the block. On the premise of what? I'm checking your engine and transmission. But actually, I've got him in the living room of his home. I got him in his comfort zone. And I just compliment him by saying, you have a nice little car. You have a nice automobile. If I work out the details, are you ready to give it up now? Well, it depends on the price. I'm assuming, Mr. Buyer, that we're not going to lose you on account of price. But we both agreed, didn't we, that we ought to have matched tires. We both agreed that there's been some damage to the fender. We both agreed there's rust in the rear. We both agreed that somebody's tampered with your gas entry cap. Now, wait and let the buyer put a price on it, then let you and I negotiate to get as much for it as we possibly can from him. I'm going to put that onus on another person. Now, I use the manager exactly as Jack does. My manager is really my escape valve. He gets me off of the hook. He's like having a coach on the sideline calling in the plays. I'm the one that's tied up emotionally. He's tied there logically. He can give me a way to go. I'm giving the customer the same thing. But most salesmen go out and look at it and, I got to say one other thing. If any young salesman watching this film, I want to tell you something. If you've got a used car evaluation book in your desk, go throw it away now. Never use it. Never bring it out in front of a customer. That is a management tool, not for you, young salesman. You're chancing an argument. Don't do it.
What do you have to say about that, Clint?
This is one of the toughest things for new salespeople to do, even experienced salespeople to do, to overcome objections and excuses, because a lot of these things are not true. So what you're trying to do then is overcome an untruth or a lie. So what you must do is never argue with the customer, agree with them, say, sure, we can be beat, and then, but, sure, you can sell your car, but, and we go back again to the word professionalism. It's training yourself to do these things. And the more you do it, the better you're going to become and be a more professional salesperson.
Thanks, Clint. In this unit, as in the others, our consultants give their own viewpoints and selling techniques in their own words. Take what they offer, practice it, adapt it, use it as a basis for developing your own style of selling. For instance, In handling customer objections, remember what they've said. The objection may be real or it may be a stall. If you suspect it's a stall, use questions to find out what's really holding your customer back. If the objection is real, it may be for one of several reasons. The customer doesn't like the person waiting on him. The customer wants a product that you don't have or don't have in stock. Or the customer doesn't like the price. If the customer doesn't like the salesperson on the sale, turn it over to someone else, usually your sales manager. If you don't have the product your customer wants or it isn't in stock, take him for an inventory walk and show him something that comes as close as possible to what he wants. Or check your inbound orders, check your locator, or order the vehicle for him. If it's price, it may be that you haven't portrayed the value of your product so it's worth your prospect's hard-earned dollars. By the time you get to the close, you should, as text said, have built up the benefits of the product to the level where the perceived value is greater than the price asked. Always remember, assume your prospect wants to buy, or he wouldn't be in your dealership. His objections are frequently just a way of asking you to help him overcome his own fear of loss, so help him out. Use your selling skills to reassure and convince him that he's doing the right thing. They'll reach that point through your skill of overcoming objections.
Keep in mind, he's already asked the individual to sign this retail buyer's order for X number of dollars. He said, tell you what I'll do. He said, I'll split the difference with you. That, without a doubt, is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
The whole time he was with me, he just tried to get me to sign. He never even tried to find out that was the truck I needed.
It's been said that if salespeople spent 80% of their time trying to qualify the customer and only 20% of their time trying to close the customer, instead of the other way around, they'd actually close more sales. But what is closing? It's getting a commitment, getting the prospect's name on an order at a price that's acceptable to both your customer and your dealership. It begins with the greeting of the customer when he walks into the showroom and continues until you have his signature on the order form. If you've done everything right up to that point, closing should come naturally. But is there a right moment? Is there a point in the selling process where you take the critical step and try to close? And is there a certain way to act with your customer during the close? What do you actually say? How do you incorporate closing into your dialogue with the customer? And what signals will a customer give you that they're ready to buy? Let's see what our panel of experts say. What types of closes have you found most effective?
A close is nothing other than a written retail buyer's order and ask the prospect to okay it. Now, that's what a close is. The reason that most salespeople are afraid of a close is because they think most of the time they're going to get a no. Now, what you should do, of course, if you do a good job selling, the close is insignificant. For instance, when you're walking around your product making a feature presentation, and it's something unique on this particular vehicle we're showing the individual, we say, now let me show you something that's come out new for this year. You like that, don't you? He says, man, I do like it. That's a nice feature on this car. And I can do the same thing on the demo ride. I get all these positives coming into me. Yes, I like the car. Yes, it's a nice unit. You know, if we could work out a deal for you today, work out a price for your budget, could you take delivery of it today? So what I'm doing then, I'm preparing myself for the close when it comes time for the close, because if he said all these yeses, how can he say no when I get him in a closing situation?
How do you handle price objections at the close, Jackie?
Well, one thing that I do find, the consumer is not aware of the day of the dollars that he can save just by the mileage that's achieved today with the current new Chevrolets. If we use an example of 14 miles per gallon, let's say 5-10 years ago, today he may be running 28 to 30, just as an example. Now, to tell a consumer is one thing, but again, to have evidence, I use a fuel chart. The fuel chart exposes when he goes, let's say, from 14 miles per gallon up to 28 miles per gallon, based on current fuel costs, he can save approximately $64 a month just on fuel cost alone. Now, if he's going to own that car 4 years, which should have been detected early in the interview, or as I refer to it as investigation, I multiply that 64 times 48 for a total savings of $3,072 net. Now, the next technique I use in closing is a question. Mr. Consumer, how much would you have to gross on your job to net $3,072? That's known as a gross net principal. He says, well, $5,000, $4,000, whatever you'd say. I said, really, you'd look at that $3,072 then in gross terms is approximately $4,000 to $5,000. What I'm doing there is, in his mind, reducing the resistance to the commitment to own the new car. Another one, I sell residual. I'm not talking about a lease. I'm talking about a retail sale. If that automobile, let's say in this example, is a $12,000 automobile, that's the market value. Mr. Consumer, you're going to own the car 2, 3, 4 years? 4 years. Based on the studies done by the leasing corporation, you would have approximately 50% of this returned to you in cash money 4 years from now. Therefore, you got a $6,000 residual coming back in cash to you. Now, I'm not talking about allowance. I'm talking about cash. Now, if it's a $12,000 automobile, sir, you got $6,000 coming back. Your cost for 4 years' use would be $6,000. Is that correct? And you're going to save $3,072 just on the fuel cost. Is that correct? You're down to $2,928. Is that correct, sir? Less what I can pay you for your car. Now, redemo the car. Go back and redemo the car. Build excitement. Get him mentally involved again. Go back and cover some things maybe that you didn't cover during your first demonstration. Back into the closing booth or back to the closing desk, again with management control. So I do not sell him just the price, or in this case, the market value. I sell him what he's getting back, less the fuel savings, less lower maintenance cost, safer car, more dependable, and plus, Mr. Consumer, you deserve it. So these would be some techniques I would apply.
Clint?
Now, when you get in a closing situation, I see it happen too often, either by a salesperson or a sales manager. They'll be, say, $500 away on a sale, and the salesman will come in and says, tell you what I'll do. Now, keep in mind, he's already asked the individual to sign this retail buyer's order for X number of dollars. He said, tell you what I'll do. He said, I'll split the difference with you. That, without a doubt, is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, because especially, say, if you ask for him to sign a retail buyer's order for $10,000, and he wants to sign it for $8,000, and you're going to come in there and split the difference. The only thing he can think is, well, buddy, you tried to take advantage of me to the tune of $1,000, so you don't do that. The only thing a salesperson has to remember in a close is the customer saying, am I getting a good deal? That's all he's saying. The less you give away on gross, the better deal he thinks he's getting. And I might hold to my price and not give any money away, but I tell you what I will do. Let's see, I'll give you a set of floor mats. Now, this all the customer's thinking is that, am I getting a good deal? The less I give him, the better deal he thinks he's getting. So don't give away all your gross. You don't have to. Because if you give a lot away, he's going to think, gosh, they sure did cut that price quick.
Mm-hmm. The higher the gross, the happier the prospect.
Amen. Yes, indeed.
The higher the gross, the happier the prospect.
Right.
He has seen more value for what he's investing his money in. So if you want an indication of how happy your prospect is, look at the gross. If you got a lot of gross, you sold it. You caused him to feel. You caused him to think. You caused him to act. You gave him the facts. You gave him the advantages. You gave him the benefits. You got him to adopt. You got him to accept. You got him to approve. That's the reason the gross is high. The salesperson that doesn't justify his price, doesn't include some of the preliminaries that we've been discussing, he'll always have low gross and unhappy owners. The higher the gross, the happier the prospect.
Tex, how do you handle objections where a customer says he has to discuss the deal with someone else?
Well, first of all, I feel sorry for the salesman and let him get himself in that position at the close. He should have found out in the used car when I said, you have a nice little car. If I work out the details, you're ready to give it up now. And he's going to say, well, I got to talk to my wife. I should have known that before I ever got that far down to the close. See, a lot of salesmen, Jack, look at it this way. It'd be nice if we could take and put little bins with pigeonholes in them, and you could put the sale in each little respective pigeonhole. Or if it was like a jigsaw puzzle, you could just fit it in and it would come out real beautiful. Closing, I wish we would lose the word close. I wish it's taken out of our vocabulary. I'd much rather have the word open. You can't close that which ain't open. And the salesman gets himself in this bind because he didn't get enough information in the things that Clint and Jackie has said here. He's let him get himself into that box. Now, he's going to find out that the close is the easiest thing in the world in the wholesale, if he's open. If you tell me to go close that door, if it ain't open, I can't close it. Don't tell me go in and close the sale if you haven't opened it. It could be that there is somebody else he has to talk to. Now, let's give the buyer the benefit of the doubt. Yes, and the salesman's overlooked it. Right then, I want to know, well, what can we do to get all parties concerned present? Because I am going to do everything I possibly can to work out a favorable investment for you that's going to save you money. Now, how can we get all parties together? I will never tell a buyer that I won't give him a price. I won't give him one, but I don't tell him I won't. And I'm not going to tell him that I'm now trying to close you and I can't close you if you don't have all the parties here. So I'm going to slowly, in a very more time you spend with the buyer, the more they obligate. I learned this from Clint many years ago. If you just spend time with them, they're going to open up and they're going to tell you these things. This isn't a difficult thing, but I just can't feel sorry for salesman gets in that bind.
Let me touch on that briefly also. Again, going back to this closing situation and the point you brought out, he has to talk to another party like a wife. Mm-hmm. Certainly you wouldn't say, well, I'm going to call my wife and see if I can sell it to you. Don't be smart. Always agree with him. Say, listen, if I was fixing to spend 10 big ones, I'd have to talk to my wife too. Here's the phone, give her a call, and I'll step out of the office while you talk to her. Assume that he says, I want to call her on the phone. Now, he didn't say that, but assume that. Right. And then if that doesn't stop him, then I would, as we discussed earlier, I would dehorse him and put him in my demo.
If I could address that also, we've always, in the brief conversation here, we've talked about the man talking to the wife. My experience has been today, we run at about 50% or better women buyers. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they're single, a lot of times they're divorcees or what I refer to as a one-parent family. This lady may have to rely on someone else to critique or to review the proposal. There again, I don't want her to have a final price. I'll never tell her I won't give her a final price. But with women having the control of the market they have today, it's a different market out there. You have to be very sensitive. This lady may not have in her own understanding where this is, quote, a good deal or not. And one way you want to lose a deal is give her a final price and let her go talk to her counselor, in this case her boyfriend or their father or brother. No matter what that figure is, he's going to find somewhere else to go shop that figure. Gloria, I want to earn your business, not just price you a car. And I think the best thing would be is for you to contact your brother, you and him evaluate this car and see if it meets the needs that you have. It has what you want on the car. And let me do this. I'll bet any bona fide deal you get, I want to earn your business, not just price you a car, but when could we get together? Could we go now and talk to your brother? A lot of salespeople miss this. A lot of these gals is more than willing to let you go and negotiate with their advisor. Not always, but sometimes. This is in the event the trust and confidence has not been established by me. Women are very important. They own 76% of all the real estate in the United States and control the other 24%. So I'm going to be aware of the position of that lady out there.
Is there a secret to successful closing?
May I approach that based on experience?
Please do, Jack.
As long as you've got techniques, such as some we've discussed, the first and most important sale made within the salesperson. He's got to be sold before he can sell. In other words, he's got to adopt, accept, and approve his product, his self-image, the profession, the professional selling. He's got to be sold himself. Selling's no more than transmitting. Clint, would you like to add to that?
Yes. Number one, don't make such a big issue of closing. Make a bigger issue of selling. But Is there a secret to successful closing? I think, number one, you have to show sincere appreciation of the product. You've got to be sold what you're selling. You have to show sincere appreciation for the customer, because that's the person that's paying you. The dealer is not paying you. And you have to have confidence in your own ability, and where does that come from? That comes from studying and learning the product, learning the road to a sale, and those kind of things. And of course, from that confidence comes enthusiasm. You learn to ask questions the right way so that you get the information that you want so you can close.
Tex, back to you. Can you summarize for us the closing techniques?
I think if you approach it with a positive attitude from the very start, I can sell these people a car. That's the best close in the world. I must, I can, I will. Now you're going to find a lot of salesmen go into close. They go in, well, I may not make this. I may not close these people. I may not. Here's a buyer. I may not be able to buy it. It may cost me too much money. Two cowards trying to do business. When you get two cowards trying to do business, it's like trying to put 2 pounds in a 1 pound sack. It just won't work. So I say overall, just if the customer's saying no, ask them one question. Do you deserve and do you feel you're entitled to a new car? That'll get you a yes. Then fine, let me earn that privilege. Now what have I said or done? What have I failed to say or do that might create a situation here to where you're saying no, when in your heart you're saying yes because you just got through saying you deserve and you're entitled to it. When you get that yes, then you can keep selling, but you can't sell to a no. You can't close to a no. You've got to get the yeses out. And I think, to me, fellas, closing just ain't that difficult.
If the preliminaries is done right, the close is inevitable.
That's right.
You'll get it.
Little inspiration and perspiration. That's it.
That's great. Thank you very much. Confirming what our experts have told us, research has determined that the following factors strongly influence the customer's buying decision during the closing step to a sale. The salesperson showed interest in making the sale, attempted to sell an in-stock vehicle, was willing to negotiate the price, gave an appraisal of the customer's car, sold the customer on the dealership, attempted to write up the order, and turned the deal over to the sales manager as necessary, particularly if a conflict developed over price or personality. Those are good points, but one other point should be added. As Tex put it, you must be aggressive psychologically. What that means very simply is, don't give up. If your customer backs away at the last minute, don't surrender. Don't be discouraged and throw in the sponge. Remember, he came in to buy a car, or he wouldn't be here now. So be aggressive. Knock again on that closed door, and it may open this time. If not, knock again and again. Years ago, there was a television program called The Millionaire. It was about a wealthy man who gave away $1 million checks to worthy recipients. But instead of grabbing the check and running with it, many of the people were so suspicious of the offer that they actually refused the check until they were convinced that it was genuine. You're in the same position as that wealthy man. You sell one of America's top transportation values, but don't be surprised or discouraged if it takes some convincing to get people to accept what you have to offer right away. But the professional understands. It's called selling.